What happens when a Nigerian billionaire, raised to protect tradition at all costs, falls deeply in love with a white woman from London? When families say no, cultures clash, and the world watches with judgment. Will love survive, or shatter under pressure? Will he choose bloodline over his heart? Can she endure a world that questions her place? When race, culture, and power stand in the way, who will walk away first? Their love defied expectations. Their marriage shocked 2 continents. But the greatest battle was yet to come. This is not just a love story. It's a fight against prejudice, tradition, and fear. Like this story if you believe love knows no color. Subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter of passion, sacrifice, and triumph. Because some love stories are meant to change the world. The morning sky over London was the color of steel, heavy with winter clouds, when Adebola Adeyemi stepped out of his chauffeur-driven car in Mayfair. The city buzzed with its usual elegance, black cabs gliding past, hurried footsteps on stone pavements, conversations blending into a steady hum of ambition. London was familiar territory to him. He owned properties here, controlled investments here, and attended meetings that bent markets in his favor. Yet that morning, Adebola felt an unfamiliar restlessness. Inside the glass-walled conference hall, powerful men spoke in numbers, projections, and percentages. Adebola listened, contributed, and dominated as usual. But when the meeting adjourned for a break, he declined the usual networking lunch. Something within him craved silence, distance from power. He walked instead. A few streets away, he found a small cafe tucked between a bookshop and a florist. It was the kind of place he would normally ignore, too quiet, too ordinary. But that ordinariness drew him in. The warmth of coffee and baked bread wrapped around him as he entered. That was when he saw her. She sat by the window, sunlight brushing her fair skin despite the gloomy sky outside. A book rested open in her hands, forgotten as she stared out at the street, as though studying the world rather than reading about it. She wore a simple coat, her blonde hair loosely tied, no jewelry screaming wealth, no phone pressed to her ear. She looked real. Adebola approached the counter, distracted, and in his haste knocked over a cup from the edge of her table. Coffee spilled, splashing across the floor. "I'm so sorry," he said quickly, reaching for napkins. She looked up, surprise flashing briefly before melting into amusement. "Well," she smiled, "that's one way to start a conversation." Her voice was calm, warm, with a soft London accent that felt like music to his ears. "I owe you another coffee," Adebola said, embarrassed. "Only if you promise not to attack it again," she replied lightly. They laughed, an easy, unexpected sound. As he returned with her drink, he hesitated, then asked, "May I join you?" To make peace with the coffee. She studied him for a moment, not with awe, not with suspicion, but curiosity. "Emily," she said, closing her book. "Adebola." That single introduction changed everything. They talked, first about the book she was reading, then about the city, then about life. Adebola spoke of Lagos traffic and boardroom battles, carefully omitting the word billionaire. Emily spoke of her work in cultural research, her love for people, and her belief that understanding differences was the key to peace. She challenged his views without fear. When he mentioned how discipline built success, she countered gently, "And empathy keeps it human." Adebola found himself listening more than speaking. Time slipped away unnoticed. Outside, the clouds lifted slightly as if the sky itself had grown curious. When he finally glanced at his watch, he frowned. "I've missed 2 calls already." "Important ones?" Emily asked. "In my world they always are," he replied. "But right now they don't feel urgent." She smiled, not flattered, just amused. They walked out of the cafe together, the air cold but refreshing. Near Hyde Park, they slowed their steps, conversation deepening. Adebola spoke of his childhood, of expectations placed on him as the only son, of a future planned long before he understood what choice meant. Emily listened quietly, her expression thoughtful. "You carry a lot," she said softly. "No one should live as a role forever." Her words struck something deep. When they reached the park gate, Adebola felt a strange fear, the kind that comes when you don't want a moment to end. "I'm in London for a few more days," he said. "Would you allow me to see you again?" Emily hesitated only briefly. "Yes," she said. "I think I would like that." As they exchanged numbers, Adebola realized something unsettling yet beautiful. For the first time in years, his heart had made a decision before his mind. And he had no idea that this simple meeting, one spilled cup of coffee, would challenge his family, shake 2 cultures, and redefine everything he thought he knew about love. London had changed everything. Love, Adebola soon learned, was easiest when it lived in private moments, and hardest when it stepped into the light. What began as casual meetings in London quickly grew into something deeper. Adebola and Emily explored the city like two people discovering it for the first time. They walked along the Thames at dusk, shared quiet dinners where laughter flowed more freely than wine, and sat for hours debating culture, power, and identity. Emily admired his discipline and vision. Adebola admired her courage, how she spoke her truth without aggression, how she listened without judgment. Their differences did not divide them, they fascinated them. But reality waited patiently. The confession at home. Back in Lagos, Adebola stood in the familiar living room of his family home, polished marble floors, ancestral portraits lining the walls, tradition thick in the air. His parents sat opposite him, regal and expectant. "There is someone I want you to meet," he began. His mother's eyes brightened. "A good Yoruba girl?" she asked quickly. Adebola inhaled. "She is British." The room changed. "British?" his father repeated slowly. "She is white," Adebola added, refusing to soften the truth. "Her name is Emily." Silence fell like judgment. His mother stood abruptly. "Adebola, have you forgotten your blood? Our customs? Do you know what people will say?" "She is educated, respectful, and kind," he said firmly. "She understands culture." His father's voice hardened. "Understanding is not belonging. A foreign woman cannot carry this family's legacy." Adebola felt the weight of generations pressing on his chest. "My legacy," he said quietly, "will be built with the woman I love." His mother's eyes glistened, not with tears but fear. Love fades. Culture remains. Adebola left the house that night with tradition echoing behind him like a warning bell. Resistance across the ocean. In London, Emily faced her own reckoning. She invited her parents for dinner in her modest apartment, carefully setting the table, rehearsing her words. When she finally told them about Adebola, about Nigeria, his wealth, his influence, concern quickly replaced curiosity. "A billionaire?" her father said slowly. "Emily, men like that don't live ordinary lives." Her mother frowned. "And Nigeria? So different. What about your independence? Your safety? Your future?" Emily straightened her shoulders. "He respects me. He listens. He doesn't try to own me. But will his family accept you?" her father asked. "Or will you always be an outsider?" The question lingered in the room, heavy and unanswered. Doubts between them. The distance between Lagos and London suddenly felt wider. Late-night calls became confessions. Adebola admitted the resistance from his parents. Emily spoke of her family's fears. Sometimes silence filled the spaces where confidence once lived. One evening, Emily asked softly, "If they force you to choose, what will you do?" Adebola closed his eyes. That question haunted him. "I have chosen already," he replied. "I'm just waiting for the world to catch up." But even as he said it, doubt crept in. Not doubt in his love, but in the cost of it. The first test. When Adebola invited Emily to Lagos, the tension sharpened. She arrived dressed modestly, respect written into every detail of her posture. She greeted elders carefully, learning greetings, bowing slightly, smiling warmly. Some family members welcomed her politely. Others watched with thinly veiled disapproval. Whispers followed her footsteps. "She is beautiful, but she is not one of us. How will she raise Yoruba children? This union will weaken the family." Emily felt it all and smiled through it. That night, alone with Adebola, she finally let her guard drop. "They don't want me," she whispered. Adebola took her hands, his voice low and resolute. "They don't know you yet. And if they never do, I will still choose you." Tears filled her eyes, not of weakness but of resolve. Love had reached its first battlefield. Two families. Two cultures. One unyielding truth. And as resistance grew stronger, so did the bond between them, tested, stretched, but not broken. The war against tradition had begun. By the time Emily returned to London, the warmth of her first days in Lagos had faded into memory, replaced by the quiet weight of what she had felt but never fully seen. Smiles that didn't reach eyes. Conversations that stopped when she entered a room. Respect offered out of duty, not acceptance. And Adebola felt it too. Back in Lagos, the pressure intensified. Elders requested private meetings. Family friends paid unannounced visits. Each conversation followed the same rhythm, gentle at first, then heavy with warning. "Adebola, you are a symbol," one uncle reminded him. "Your marriage is not just personal," another elder added. "It represents us all." At first, Adebola responded with patience, then with firmness, eventually with silence. But silence did not bring peace. One evening, his mother summoned him. In the living room sat a young Nigerian woman, elegant and composed, her head bowed respectfully. She was introduced as Funk, the daughter of a respected family, educated, beautiful, perfect. "This is what we want for you," his mother said calmly. "A woman who understands where you come from." Adebola felt anger flare, not at Funk, but at the assumption that his heart was negotiable. "I have already chosen," he said coldly. His mother's voice cracked. "You are throwing away everything we raised you for." Adebola stood. "No, I am choosing love." He walked out, leaving tradition trembling behind him. Emily's breaking point. In London, Emily faced a different kind of battle. Friends questioned her motives. Colleagues whispered about power imbalance. Articles about cross-cultural marriages filled her search history late at night, most ending in cautionary tales. One evening, she sat alone in her apartment, Adebola's last words echoing in her mind. "I will stand with you." But standing had consequences. Her parents called again, their voices softer now, but heavy with fear. "Emily," her mother said gently, "we don't want to lose you." That night, Emily cried, not because she doubted Adebola's love, but because she feared losing herself in the storm. The question that almost ended everything. When Adebola flew to London to see her, exhaustion lined both their faces. They sat in silence at first, hands intertwined, hearts racing. Then Emily spoke. "What if loving me cost you too much?" she asked. "Your family, your name, your peace." Adebola's jaw tightened. "Nothing costs more than living a lie." "But what if one day you resent me?" she whispered. The question hung between them, sharp, dangerous. Adebola stood and walked to the window, the city lights reflecting in his eyes. "I was raised to sacrifice happiness for honor," he said quietly. "But I have spent my whole life being what others needed. If I lose you, I lose myself." Emily rose, tears slipping down her cheeks. "And if I stay," she said, "I risk never being fully accepted." They stood there, two people at the edge of love's cliff. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Adebola turned to her and said the words that changed everything. "Choose me. Even if the world refuses us. Choose me." Emily took a trembling breath. "I choose you," she said. "But we walk this path as equals, or not at all." He pulled her into his arms, holding her like someone who had almost lost everything. A decision with no turning back. That night they made a choice, not just to love but to fight. They would stop apologizing for their happiness. They would stop explaining their bond. They would move forward openly, deliberately, together. And if that meant standing alone against two worlds, they would stand side by side. Because love, when tested, reveals its truth. And theirs had survived the fire. But unknown to them, the greatest challenge still lay ahead, one that would force families, cultures, and pride to either bend or break. The announcement came quietly, but its echo shook families on two continents. Adebola was going to marry Emily. No negotiations. No compromises. No delays disguised as patience. The reactions were swift and divided. In Lagos, some elders withdrew completely, declaring the union a rebellion against tradition. Others argued behind closed doors, insisting that time would correct his decision. Adebola's mother fell ill, not physically but emotionally, retreating into silence so deep it frightened him more than anger ever could. In London, Emily's parents asked for one last conversation. They sat across from her at the same dining table where she had first told them about Adebola. "You're really doing this," her father said, not accusing, just tired. "Yes," Emily replied gently. Her mother reached for her hand. "Promise us you won't disappear. Promise you won't shrink to fit into someone else's world." Emily smiled softly. "I'm not shrinking. I'm expanding." For the first time they saw certainty, not rebellion, in her eyes. Preparing for the impossible. Wedding planning became an emotional battlefield. Should it be in Lagos or London? Church or traditional rites? British elegance or Yoruba royalty? Emily surprised everyone by insisting on learning. She spent hours understanding Yoruba customs, how to greet elders, the symbolism of marriage rites, the meaning behind fabrics and colors. She practiced phrases in Yoruba until her accent softened. She refused to treat culture as decoration. Adebola watched her with awe. "You're doing more than required," he said one night. "I'm not doing it for approval," she replied. "I'm doing it for respect." In Lagos, whispers began to change tone. "She's trying. She listens. She bows with sincerity." Resistance did not vanish, but it weakened. The day of reckoning. The wedding took place in Lagos. On the morning of the ceremony, Adebola stood alone in his room, dressed in a regal white agbada embroidered with gold. He stared at his reflection, wondering who would walk through the doors, who would stay away. Then he heard the drums. Emily arrived in a gown that stunned the room, a seamless blend of British grace and Nigerian heritage. Aso oak wrapped elegantly around her waist, her veil light and simple. She walked with quiet dignity, her eyes searching for Adebola. When they met at the altar, the world faded. Vows were spoken in English. Blessings followed in Yoruba. Drums answered violins. Tradition met modernity, not in conflict but harmony. Then something unexpected happened. Adebola's mother stood. The hall froze. She walked slowly toward Emily, studying her closely. Emily bowed instinctively, respect etched into her posture. After a long pause, the woman who had resisted the most spoke. "You have chosen my son," she said. "If you will protect his heart as fiercely as he protects yours, then kneel." Emily knelt. His mother placed her hands on Emily's head. "You are now my daughter." Tears broke through the room like rain after drought. As Adebola and Emily danced together, laughter and music rising into the night sky, something irreversible had happened. They had not erased culture. They had not conquered tradition. They had earned space within it. Their wedding was not perfect, but it was powerful. It proved that love did not weaken heritage. It expanded it. And as fireworks lit the Lagos sky, one truth stood undeniable. Against resistance, fear, and pride, two worlds had chosen unity. Yet marriage was only the beginning, because building a life together would demand more courage than the wedding ever did. Marriage did not bring instant peace, it brought purpose. When the celebrations faded and the last guests departed, Adebola and Emily stepped into a quieter reality, one where love had to prove itself daily. They settled between two worlds, dividing their time between Lagos and London, refusing to abandon either side of their identity. At home they built something intentional. Their house in Ikoyi was neither strictly Nigerian nor purely British. It was warm, layered, and alive. Yoruba art shared wall space with framed London photography. Sunday mornings carried the aroma of both English breakfast tea and pepper soup. Christmas carols blended with Thanksgiving prayers in Yoruba. It was not confusion, it was balance. Marriage tested by expectations. Society watched closely. Some expected Emily to fade into the background. Others waited for conflict, for culture shock, for resentment to bloom. Even within Adebola's extended family, skepticism lingered. Will she endure? They whispered. Will she submit to our ways? Emily surprised them all. She did not compete with tradition, she complemented it. She greeted elders with respect, asked questions instead of making assumptions, and never pretended to know what she did not. Yet she also remained herself, confident, articulate, and unafraid to speak when it mattered. Adebola too learned. He softened. He listened more. He learned that strength was not always command, it was partnership. A new power in business. Their union reshaped Adebola's empire. Emily's background in cultural consulting gave her a unique lens. She helped Adebola navigate European markets with sensitivity and insight, preventing costly missteps and opening doors no money alone could unlock. She challenged internal corporate cultures that overlooked ethics and inclusion. At first, some executives resisted. A wife should not be in the boardroom, one whispered. Adebola ended the conversation swiftly. She is not my wife in this room, he said. She is an asset. Results followed. International partnerships flourished. Brand reputation strengthened. Employees felt seen, respected, and valued across borders. Love had become strategy, and strategy had become success. Families slowly healed. Time did what arguments could not. Adebola's mother began calling Emily, not out of obligation but curiosity. She asked about recipes, about Emily's childhood, about plans for the future. Laughter replaced tension. Emily's parents visited Lagos for the first time, fear in their eyes turning to admiration as they saw their daughter, not diminished but radiant. They witnessed Adebola's respect, his patience, his devotion. We were wrong, her father admitted quietly one evening. You didn't lose yourself. Emily smiled. I found more of myself. The legacy begins. When their first child was born, the room filled with prayer, tears, and awe. A child with skin kissed by two worlds. A name chosen carefully, one English, one Yoruba. A future shaped by love rather than fear. Holding their baby, Adebola whispered, "This is why we fought." Emily rested her head against his chest. This is why it was worth it. Flourishing beyond borders. Years later, their story became more than gossip. It became inspiration. They were invited to speak at global forums about leadership, love, and cultural unity. Their marriage was no longer questioned. It was studied. Together, they funded schools, cultural exchange programs, and initiatives that empowered young people to embrace identity without limitation. They did not pretend the journey had been easy, but they stood as proof that when love is rooted in respect, courage, and equality, it does more than survive. It flourishes. And in the quiet of their home, long after applause faded, Adebola and Emily knew one thing for certain. They had not just built a successful marriage or a thriving business. They had built a bridge between worlds, and walked across it hand in hand. Time has a way of revealing truth. Years passed, not in dramatic leaps, but in steady growth, board meetings, school runs, late-night conversations, and quiet prayers whispered in gratitude. Adebola and Emily no longer lived to prove anything, yet their lives continued to answer every doubt that once questioned them. They had become normal in the most extraordinary way, raising children of two worlds. Their children grew up fluent in both cultures. Mornings began with Yoruba greetings and ended with English bedtime stories. They danced effortlessly between Christmas traditions in London and festive family gatherings in Lagos. They learned respect before privilege, identity before entitlement. When their daughter once asked, "Am I British or Nigerian?" Emily smiled and replied, "You are both and more." Adebola added gently, "You belong wherever you stand with integrity." Those words became family doctrine. The day tradition fully yielded. One afternoon, during a large family gathering in Ibadan, an elder rose to speak. He cleared his throat, his gaze steady on Adebola and Emily. "We once believed tradition would break if it bent," he said. "But we were wrong. It has grown stronger." The room murmured in agreement. Adebola's mother, now softer with age and wisdom, took Emily's hand openly, no hesitation, no formality. "This is my daughter," she said simply. In that moment, resistance finally dissolved, not because it was defeated but because it had learned. An empire with a human heart. Adebola's business empire reached heights once unimaginable, but its defining feature was no longer wealth, it was purpose. Under Emily's influence and Adebola's leadership, the company became a model for ethical global expansion, diversity, and cultural intelligence. They created leadership programs for young Africans and intercultural partnerships across Europe. Success followed responsibility, and responsibility multiplied impact. Love revisited. One evening in London, years after their first meeting, Adebola took Emily back to the same cafe near Hyde Park. The place had changed. New owners, new paint, new faces. But the window table was still there. "You spilled coffee here," Emily teased. "And lost my life to love," he replied. They laughed, older, wiser, still deeply in love. Adebola took her hand. "If I had to fight the world again for you, I would." Emily squeezed his fingers. "So would I." What the world learned from them. Their story was told in articles, books, and documentaries, not as a fairy tale but as a testament. That love does not erase culture, it honors it. That unity does not require sameness. That courage is choosing truth even when comfort is easier. They were no longer just a billionaire and a woman from London. They were proof. Epilogue, beyond forever. In the quiet of their home, as laughter echoed down the halls and the future unfolded before them, Adebola and Emily understood something profound. They had not just survived opposition. They had transformed it. Their love outlived doubt. Their marriage outgrew fear. Their legacy crossed borders. And long after titles faded and fortunes shifted, one truth would remain. When two hearts choose love boldly, the world eventually learns to follow. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more. Thank you.